How did your affair start? From the other perspective. But, I was seeing this girl for 4 months, let's call her Sam, that I met while she was working at a bar downtown. We were practically in a relationship but never really had the talk. We went on a bunch of dates together. She met my co-workers and I hung out with her and her roommates often. One day I'm over at her place drinking with her and the roomies, and towards the end of the night we decide to go into her room to do the deed. Suddenly Sam starts acting really strange and quiet. I ask her if she wants to stop and she says yes, so I do and ask her what's up. She is reluctant to tell me anything, so I decide, you know what, I'm just gonna leave and we can talk about this later. As I'm walking to my car that's parked on the street, I'm met at the end of the driveway by a dude that looked familiar. I realized as he got closer that this was Sam's ex-boyfriend that I've seen pictures of posted a year before on Instagram. As he walks by me he threatened me if I ever came back here. I was a bit of a cocky crap and said why the frick shouldn't I come back. He then tells me that he knows I've been fricking his girlfriend, to which I said you guys have been broken up since the summer. I just left and decided I'd confront Sam about this later. Turns out the ex was right and I'd been helping her cheat on her boyfriend for the last 4 months. The most fricked up part? Her roommates and friends were in on it the whole time. This woman wanted to meet my daughter too. So glad I dodged that bullet. Hey, I got cheated on by someone named Sam. Though I never met the guy she did it with, so probably a different Sam. My wife let a friend borrow a hooded sweatshirt one evening while she had a fire and a few friends over. Her friend washed said hoodie and returned it. My wife washes it because she doesn't like her fabric softener. There was a pair of her friend's underwear stuck in the sleeve of the hoodie that came out in our washer machine. I get home from working and she accused me of cheating after a massive fight, and me racking my brain she called her friend and confirmed it's her black thong. Everyone immediately jumps to cheating. When my wife found a napkin in my pocket and swore it was not her lipstick, I had no idea how it got inside my pocket. After months of her thinking I was cheating, at lunch one day I was eating a sandwich and drinking a red Gatorade. After wiping my mouth with the napkin, I realized it was the same shade as my evidence of an affair napkin. Was once accused of cheating. Front passenger seat on my car was moved too close for any guy to sit and my then GF demanded to know who I'd had in my car. I told her it was Chris, a coworker. She came storming into my company the next day, demanding to see Chris. Imagine her face when she found out Chris was Christopher, a little person. He stood 4 feet 2. I milked her apology for a decade. It never did, but I couldn't convince the ex that it didn't. So here I am, a 42-year-old divorced dude trying to start over in the craziest timeline imaginable. My husband's affair started shortly after we got married. We lived in an apartment complex and all the mailboxes were in the lobby area. I checked the mail while he was at work, like I always did. I opened a card, not paying attention to who it was addressed to, but the front of the card read, "I miss you in the morning, I miss you in the evening," and the inside of the card read, "But I especially miss you at night," and there was a drawing of a woman in bed wearing a negligee, and it was signed, "I miss you and love you," with a woman's name. So I looked at the envelope and it was addressed to my husband. We had only been married 3 months. So I immediately gathered all of his items and threw them into the hallway. He came home and tried to come into the door, but I had the chain lock on it. He was like, "What the heck is going on?" I said, "Your girlfriend misses you, so we're over and you can go stay with her." And I opened the door wide enough to throw the card and envelope into the hall. About 15 minutes later, there is a knock at my door. It's my next door neighbor. I had seen him around but we hadn't made formal introductions yet. I opened the door and my husband is standing down the hallway. The neighbor says, "Hi, my name is, you accidentally got my mail today." My neighbor had the exact first and last name as my husband. He said, "My wife has been out of town on a business trip. She sent the card to me." I said, "Bulls," and shut the door on him. 5 minutes later, there's another knock at my door. I look to see my next door neighbor again, but this time he's holding up his driver's license and the card envelope. His license shows he has the exact name as my husband, and the card envelope has their apartment number on it. At the time, it was pretty freaking traumatic, but now, 31 years later, my husband thinks it's absolutely hilarious. Normally, I call crazies for jumping to conclusions without explanation, but neighbor with exact same name and slightly mistaken address is so justified to believe. She started telling me about relationship troubles. We grew closer over time, sharing insecurities and whatnot. Eventually we developed feelings, on which we could not act. Eventually, those feelings became too strong and we caved. It lasted for 5 years, me trying to commit to this new thing we developed, her not completely able to let go. She jumped between me and the other. Eventually I realized my committing to and feeling for her were unhealthy, and I realized, too late, that I didn't want to be the person that made someone else cheat. Found out she was cheating on me. Decided to cheat on her as an act of revenge. It did not make me feel any better. Pretty much the exact opposite actually. I just felt like I was a piece of crap as well. It was a very short affair. I was stuck in a non-physical marriage with a hoarder. Rats were living in the dryer. As example, who didn't keep up with house repairs. Spent 4 months drinking bottled water because the well wasn't safe without work. Couldn't get out because I was 20 kilometers from anywhere. Was given a car that didn't run. Co-worker usually picked me up for work, or I walked to the closest carpool lot. Cracked under the lonely stress when co-worker found me attractive. Turns out my ex was really closeted, hence the hoarding and inability to function. I wasn't running on all cylinders after all that either. He's got a roommate now, the house is fixed. I'm still with co-worker after 10 years and we all get together so often. Prime example of people who really shouldn't have been married in the first place. I was maybe 12 years old, and I told my mom that my best friend and I were having an affair. I thought affair meant fight. Edit. I just realized, I probably only knew the word because my parents had a long, terrible divorce while I was young. The divorce was because one of them cheated and the other avenge cheated. Staying on message of this miserable thread lol. This is golden. Reminds me of my ex Bill. He had it all, and lost it all. Just in case he's still reading my comments. Hi Morgan. Merry Christmas, you freaking dodgy W. Why are you still snooping through my Reddit? All my homies hate Morgan. Frick you Morgan. The wife of a guitarist in a relatively famous band from the early 2000s met me and I was strung along with the I don't want to be with him promises. Building me up into a jealous man that I promised I'd never be by fueling the seriousness of the affair but also sleeping with other men. And conceding that it was cheating on me. Never really addressing that we're doing that, but okay. Was an absolute minfuck and the whole thing felt very dirty and degrading. They're not together anymore and she ended up being with one of the 4 guys she was with. Had a kid with him. But I still see that husband out. I guess he doesn't know. Or he doesn't, too much time has passed to care. I don't really know him. That crap sent me into a spiral of relationship issues that take heavy management. I've been the other guy a handful of times, but this one really messed me up for a long time. She found a tank top in the laundry that wasn't her size. She threw it at my face, said I hope she was worth it and stormed off. Turns out it was her shirt that I shrunk because I'm bad at laundry. My husband spent a few years trying to talk me into cuckolding and I told him I'm not that kind of person and that I wanted love and to feel like I was enough for someone. He wouldn't stop asking. It's all he talked about. It ruined our sex life completely. He developed ED and kept suggesting I find someone else. Eventually I did start seeing other people and the rule was never have any feelings for other people, but that's basically the only rule put forward. Anyway, 2 times I fell for someone who told me that I was all they wanted and I was enough for them. He noticed when I started having feelings, or I confessed, and he demanded that I stop, but I didn't. Both of those men were lying completely and seeing other women while telling me that. I initiated a divorce. I don't want to piece together happiness through various people. All I wanted was to just be in one relationship with one man who loves me, and now I'm old and I'll probably never have it. She walked onto my side of our shared balcony. I let her inside. She stayed a little while. She started coming over more often, nearly daily, so I started buying her some snacks, some toys. We'd spend as much time as we could before my neighbor noticed she was with me. Rainbow, I miss you XX. People will do anything for P. I met a married lady while at Myrtle Beach. She was in a crappy marriage, pina colada or two later we were talking. Yada yada. Ended up together for several years. I felt a little bad about the beginning situation, but it was the best years of my crappy life. And hers, I think. Miss her every day. Second wife cheated on me with her girlfriend and then another guy. Didn't bother me because we were in a bad marriage. Now, I'm happily single again. But you yada yadaed over the best part. We met at work and started having threesomes with my wife. One thing led to another and we started hooking up without her. Thankfully my wife forgave me and we were able to reconcile. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done. If you're considering cheating, let me assure you, you will either get caught or, hopefully, be so consumed with guilt that you will rat yourself out. Very gradually, I had an emotional affair, though I didn't know what that was at the time. I was in an unhappy relationship but not ready to admit I wanted to leave. I started spending time with a co-worker and we became instant best friends. There was no initial attraction. We just had a lot of the same interests and the same friends and attended the same social and professional events. As I got to know him, I could hardly believe he was a real person. He was the best person I've ever met. Funny, kind, gentle, fun, and respectful. Other than spending too much time with me, he never crossed a line. I fell so hard, but I denied it even harder. I started lying about spending time with this person, even in a group. There were many opportunities for things to turn physical, and even today I marvel at our restraint. We didn't become physical or even admit feelings to each other until after I left my ex. I was angry. After spending 6 years begging my ex to spend time with me or show interest in the things I liked. I had been a dedicated and loyal partner for 6 years, most of which were long distance. I moved to a new city with him, supported his dreams, which he achieved, but at the detriment of our relationship. I was always a side character in his story. So I left him, and like a week later began the most magical love story I could have imagined. I bear the burden of having been dishonest, and I know now that I was wrong. I do regret lying so much and hurting another person. I wish I had been brave enough to leave earlier. Although if I had, things might not have worked out the way they did, and I wouldn't risk what I have now for anything, not even the feelings of my ex. I was told you're lucky that you have me. If you ever leave me you'll die alone because no one would want you, so I had this burning desire to prove her wrong. Ended up sleeping with her boss. Yeah, that's called emotional abuse, bruv. Dodge a bullet there. In his mind, I was never unfaithful to him, but with his undiagnosed mental illness I was, so it might as well have been fact. Oh man, I feel you. According to my ex, I basically slept with everyone. If he started a new job then I was sleeping with the guys he now worked with. I was never unfaithful. Mental illness is a horrible thing. I stuck it out for almost 13 years. I left and we were divorced within 5 weeks. He had someone moved in before he even received the final decree. I wasn't happy in my marriage. I was traveling for work and was at dinner with someone else who had traveled into the location. We were the last two out and were talking. I asked about her family. She said her husband was in butthole. One thing led to another, and we started an affair for the next 2 years. I haven't had an affair, but I am the product of one. My mom married her first husband back in 1992. She was 22, and he was in his 40s. My mom when she was younger was a sucker for tall, dark and handsome men, and older men, and this guy was both. Anyway, things were fine at first, but eventually my mom was ready to settle down and start a family. Her husband wasn't, even though he told her he was. He still went out partying and drinking all the time. He was, and might still be, an alcoholic. About a year after they got married, my mom got pregnant with his baby, but the constant stress and drama of their arguing about his drinking and partying took its toll, and sadly she miscarried. Afterwards, things continued to get volatile. Her husband started an affair with a woman they both knew, but he denied it up and down, and during one particular argument, he actually pinned my mom to the wall by her throat. She pushed him off of her, screamed and cursed him out, and told him it was the last time he'd ever lay hands on her. Then, one night she met this military guy, who would eventually become my biological father. They dated for a while, and after several months, My mom got pregnant with me. My bio dad wanted to marry my mom and have her move to Michigan with him, but she didn't want to, so they split. The truth is my mom only had an affair because she wanted to have a baby, and she knew it would never happen with her first husband. She was upfront with her husband about the whole situation, and told him everything. He said he would clean up, and love and raise me as his own. Needless to say he didn't clean up, and my mom took me and left him when I was only a year old. And she worked and took care of me all on her own, until nearly 3 years later when she met my stepfather, who is the total opposite of past men she was with. Short, blonde hair and blue-eyed, and about 8 years younger than her. Side note, I did meet my bio dad when I was 13. After I spent a week with him and his family, he never talked to me again, something he promised my mom he wouldn't do when she was arranging for us to meet. Side note, I did meet my bio dad when I was 13. After I spent a week with him and his family, he never talked to me again, something he promised my mom he wouldn't do when she was arranging for us to meet. What a brutal thing to do to a 13-year-old. I hope you have been able to process all of that and moved forward with your life. Met her at my now ex-wife's birthday party. Asked wife if I could frick her and wife said sure. We got along great and started dating. All above board with the wife. Wife eventually gets jealous and says no more. I kept it up behind her back. Eventually dumped the wife due to her coke problem. This was a wild ride. I really want to see this blow up. I've only ever been cheated on, and never heard an unbiased answer to this question. I want to know what I did wrong. I'm gonna upvote because I wanna see some drama. I cheated on my son's mom for a few months with an exotic dancer. I was driving for a rideshare company at the time and took her home. She showed me her breasts unsolicited and invited me in to hang out. We hooked up on multiple occasions in the next 3 or so months. I knew my son's mom and I were never supposed to be together. We had met and she got pregnant within 90 days. We tried to move past my infidelity and lasted almost 3 years, but nothing had ever gotten better. We were just incompatible. That's why I cheated. I felt trapped and was nervous about the future, but since I had a child on the way, I couldn't bring myself to leave because of the societal hate I'd get and the deadbeat label. This was around 6 years ago, maybe a little longer. I regret my decision to this day. If I could turn back the hands of time, yes, I'd still keep my relationship with my son and be there, but I wouldn't have stayed with his mom. I would have moved on. She didn't deserve any of what I did to her. I ghosted the dancer after things got too close for comfort. Deleting messages and lying to my son's mom got more and more difficult as guilt ate me alive. Shortly after my son was born, someone I was close to spilled the beans to my son's mom and we were never the same. I hope that dancer is doing well in her life and that she's happy. My son's mom and I are close friends now. She's remarried with a 4th child on the way now. We have both put the past behind us. Her 2 older kids have a great relationship with me, as my son does too. As far as my actions, I couldn't ever do that again to anyone. I was such a dong to treat her that way. Is it technically my affair if I was single and she wasn't? Oh well. She knocked on the door of the EMS station in town and asked for a volunteer application. It was a pretty unremarkable first meeting other than I thought she was beautiful. Fast forward 2 weeks or so and I run into her at a bar with her fiance. We exchanged numbers that night on a professional level only. Soon after she starts coming to trainings. She was already a nurse and we had an EMT class running at the time. I happened to be one of the teachers of the class. In our state even a doctor has to take an EMT basic class before they can just challenge the tests for the paramedic level. Long story short, we started spending a lot of time together. We talked a lot more often. Started accidentally running into each other at the local drinking establishments. Her fiance liked me in the beginning and used to buy me shots and drinks all the time. Before you know it we were much more than friends. That started a long couple years of a both awesome and dark time in my life. I don't regret much of it, but I'll say this, if I was older, wiser, and not a party animal I would be with her today. And boy I'll tell ya, I miss her like crazy, and it's been like 7 years. I'm sure this is a common story. Co-worker, who I found attractive, listened to me and let me tell her about my troubled and abusive marriage. She helped me see there was an alternative. Here we are 14 years later and happily married. Sometimes the grass is indeed greener. She was my savior from a crappy life with a horrible wife and lots of debt. Anybody truly struggling with this situation, on either end, please take a few hours of your life to read His Needs, Her Needs. It's a book by Willard F. Holly and I read it well before asking my wife to marry me, and it opened my eyes to how easy affairs are, even to someone incredibly devoted to their partner. 100% recommend it. If you need the book but can't afford it, just message me and I will get it for you. Nice try, Willard F. Holly. I was having issues in my current relationship. The girl I was with at the time, let's call her Mary, said we might be over because she wanted someone who was religious. I went to one of my friends, Kate, to talk it out because she was a good friend and we were close. After talking to Kate about it for a while, she convinced me Mary would leave me and there was no point in talking to her about it. I was pretty upset about it. She offered to hang out to distract me from everything because I really was in love with Mary and wanted so bad for her to be the one. When Kate was dropping me off, she kissed me and that just escalated more over time. I should have said no and just tried to talk to Mary about it. Kate apologized for manipulating me later, but frick, I just should never have gave in. It was never about Kate just being better than Mary. I loved her so much but was convinced I'd lose her. There's something about Mary. Because I was in butthole who was making excuses to do what I wanted. I didn't realize that the relationship I was in was not healthy at the time and found another guy who I was having fun with. I was telling myself that it wouldn't hurt anyone if no one found out and that I was just experimenting with being poly. I cheated. Plain and simple. It took me a long time after the relationship ended to realize what I had done and I feel terrible about it to this day. I moved to a new city for work, far away from my girlfriend. We'd been together for years and we were at a crap or get off the pot point. I decided to move forwards in that relationship and proposed, but my heart wasn't in it. We were planning on getting married in a year when my GF came out to move with me. I was a coward. I posted in the subreddit for the new city asking about friends and a lady reached out to me. We immediately hit it off, but it was just platonic, so I'll let it roll. But bit by bit we started flirting. I pushed back half-heartedly but let it run too much. I wanted it to happen and I wanted to be convinced to let it happen. We got on really well, had similar ways of thinking and interests, and we had a lot of fun together. Great chemistry, really great. She rapidly became a close friend. Meanwhile, my relationship was crumbling. Neither of us was particularly happy and I wasn't man enough to end it. After a few months I went out for drinks with the new girl and we started getting handsy, but nothing beyond that. A couple weeks after I had made up my mind to dump my GF and go with the new girl, I knew what I had to do but I still didn't have the balls. Lust got the better of me in the end and we started sleeping together. It took me another couple weeks to break up with my ex. In the end things didn't work out with the new girl. Turned out she also had a BF far away in a long distance relationship which she was keeping secret. I was pretty pissed and broke things off. We didn't speak for a couple years after that, but we recently got back into contact and apologized to each other for the way we treated each other. We're no longer in the same city but stay in contact and are good friends. She's a good person. Just a human being like me trying to do their best and figure crap out. I do a lot of good things, but I failed on this one. My ex met a great guy soon after me and is very happy with him now. I'm going back to visit soon and I'm going to see if she would like to meet and I will apologize. I know she'll applicate that. My affair partner broke up with her long distance BF as she wasn't happy in that relationship. She's a great woman but unfortunately isn't having much luck and romance right now. I'm sure she'll get snapped up soon. I spent a few years in therapy trying to be a better person. I met a few different people while trying to figure my crap out. I'm not proud of what I did but I also accept myself as a flawed human being. I'm now in a stable relationship and I am much better equipped to be a better boyfriend and person. I understand why people may have the sentiment once a cheater, always a cheater, but no. After seeing the crap, turmoil, and pain that caused, and how it turned my life upside down, absolutely freaking not. I'm also a lot healthier mentally now and more mature. Life is tough, guys. Be kind to each other. I can't tell you how my ex-wife started. Guy she knew was dumped by his girlfriend. He just needed someone to talk to and I didn't need to worry about him because he was fat and older and she isn't attracted to him. Suddenly she's not communicating with me and lying about being at his house. I should point out she had cheated before, but this was the first affair. It was all really downhill from there. Funny thing is, I remember telling her the first time I met this dude a couple years earlier that I thought he was creepy as heck and didn't like him. Turns out that feeling was right. My boyfriend of the time was an R and would constantly disappear on drug-fueled binge for days on end with his father, which makes it even more what fishimo, which was better than when he was drunk and violent at home, but still. Our neighbors have a son, couple years younger than me, who was making my gator go off. Twink with pastel clothes, always well put, little white car and a poodle, who I grew close to in those periods where I was alone all weekend or when my ex was violent. Convenient as he was almost always next door. Turns out neighbor's kid is really not gay at all, just into women couple years older than him, as I was bound to discover few weeks later. We've been together over 2 years now and planning on getting married at some point after the pandemic is over. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.